All right, this is Nightwing, and we're gonna get started on this air brushless 5-in-1 flight controller. Let's get started. So, I'm gonna break it out. I'm gonna take out everything from the packaging. For the rest of this build, we're gonna be using a Tiny Whoop pinch camera, as well as the Argon motors. They're 702 26,000 kV motors, and we're going to be building this all on a Meteor Air 65 frame. And to mount it, mount the camera, I am using this polypropylene mount printed by P-Mantix or Filipino. First things first, I always countersink my screws, whether they're metal or anything. It just helps protect the motors a little bit, because when you have impact on the bottom, all that force kind of can get sent into the frame a little bit easier. So I'm going to be using a Dremel and with a grinding drill bit right here. We have these on tinywhoop.com. Phobos actually told me about these, about grinding it down. I used to melt them down, but to countersink, but it would take way too long. So when you Dremel it like this, it usually fills in the holes. But if you take a Wera screwdriver, and I like using the 000 for this because it's a little bit skinnier, and you can just go through and kind of stab the center and clear out the plastic for the screws to go through. So we're just going to go around, pop out all the plastic real quick, and then that is all the frame modification that I do to my frames these days. Everything else just seems to make the frame way too fragile. Okay, next we're gonna shove the gummies into this flight controller and get it all prepped and ready for soldering the rest of everything else on. I think we're gonna solder this antenna on right now. Just to get it out of the way with. We're going to be soldering this to this tiny little hole up in the corner right here. And I think the best way to go about this, we're going to do it the other way. I'm going to flip this bad daddy. Here we go. We're going to go for this. Okay, so while we're in here, I'm just gonna solder or tin up all the other pads that we're gonna be using in this build. So that's gonna be the rest of the motor pads, and it turns out that these camera pads are already pre-tinned. I'm just gonna throw in a little bit of extra solder because a lot of the solder from China comes without lead in it, and it makes it a lot more difficult to work with. All right, and just like that, we are, I don't know, probably like halfway done.
Yeah, right. The motors are
it's
really
so easy. So we're just going to shove these gummies into the holes. This is my least favorite part of the build. Just because it's always such a pain. I usually just twist and just work it. Oh, there it goes. Right down.
It's a dark floor. I don't know how easy we're gonna find this.
We'll find it. And we're back. We're just got this right off the floor. It was easy peasy lemon squeezy. Found it right where it landed. And yeah, so just like that, let's get some motors on this. So using the Argons, I'm gonna pull all of them out. So when I'm soldering up motors, all I do nowadays, because we shorten the motor wire length, so I'm just going to trim these plugs off, strip back some of the wire, and solder them up. You really don't need to strip back very much wire when you're, that was even too much. All right. Because the camera pads are on the bottom, I'm going to mount my camera right now. With these mounts, you need to run your camera wires through the back of this V right here, but this V is also big enough so that if you need to, you can just slide the camera through the back of it like this. And so you don't need to unsolder your cameras just to swap camera mounts when they do eventually break. The way to do this real quick is to shove the camera into the front mount right there and seat it nice and flush real quick. It kind of just cleans out the filament, like maybe it strings a little bit. And then what you're gonna do is flip the camera upside down and make sure that this little tab is pointing towards the bottom of the camera, just like so, and push it all the way in. And there's a little lip of polypropylene that's gonna wrap around the lens and kind of hold it into place. Next, what you do is I fold this back in perfect 90 degrees, and you kind of want to just wrap and stretch it back a little bit. And then I start at the bottom and kind of one corner at a time and shove it into the mount so that it wraps around like that. And then the last thing you're gonna do is kind of bend this front tab back a little bit so that it'll line up eventually over the hole. Right. So I'm gonna just eyeball my wire length. I always like keeping my wires as short as possible. So we're gonna kind of test fit the camera. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just gonna hold that camera right there, flip it over, and my wires are right about there. So we're gonna just trim it and use my fingernail to kind of mark the wire and clip it right there. Kind of straighten them out a little bit, and then we're just going to strip and tin them and solder them up. Whoa. Anyways, so let's see here. Let's take a look at this board and see how everything's aligned. So if we get close enough, it says cam on the top and then 5-volt and then ground. So we got cam on the top, which is yellow, 5-volt, which is red, and ground, which is black. And just like that, we have soldered our camera on. Yep, everything fits perfectly. These are some short wires. I love it. Let's put it into the frame. Make sure you line up all the posts. Push her down. I usually don't screw my board in at first, just in case I need to like move something around. It might get in the way. Now we're gonna go and we're just gonna use metal screws for this build. One, they're a little bit more durable, and they're just a lot easier to work with because they're magnetic, and so they'll stick to the end of your screwdriver when you need them to. We're gonna take it. I always feed my motor wires through there towards the flight controller. Kind of pinch it into place and zap it down. And there's one in there, and if you look at it, the countersinking actually makes the head of the screw like super flush with the bottom of the frame. So when you do make a impact on the bottom, like just landing your drone, it sends that impact into the plastic a little bit, which is more protective for your motors and for just everything. So now that we got all 4 motors screwed in very nicely with these super shiny, nice, super strong, durable, magnetic metal screws, we're gonna solder them onto the board. So I'm just gonna use the OmniFixo once again. I always just solder my motor wires directly down. I don't like to do any fancy twisting of the wires or anything. Oh, there's wires out of the way. Move all the other motor wires out of the way real quick. Oh, we hit the frame. That's the only problem about soldering in the frame is you got to watch out for melting the frame. But I like the challenge. Also, when you're fixing drones and replacing motors on drones and all of this and that on drones, a lot of the time you don't want to take everything out of the frame, so you just do it in the frame. And stuff can get a little melty, but it all works out in the end. And just like that, I think we've built pretty much a full drone. Is that it? Let's go slap this camera on top. So when you're screwing this mount together, I found it easiest to just kind of hold it outside of the frame and just start the threads through it. And then kind of hold the other side and just kind of pinch it together like that so that it's holding itself together. Then it's super easy to just line the camera up over the hole. Kind of angle the screw in the right direction and twist it all together. I usually twist it a little bit too far and then back it off just a little to try and help keep that tab nice and straight and aligned. We're gonna grab the other two flathead ones. I don't know exactly what these are called, what these screws are. So last thing that we got going for this build is we're going to be adding this antenna, or well, we're going to be adding this BT2 plug and this dipole antenna. Some people will solder through the through holes and everything, but what I like to do is I like to just fill the through holes and then solder on top. So that's what I'm going to do here. We're going to just dump a whole bunch of solder. The ground is always the hardest, so sometimes you just need to stick the soldering tip in there and just let it sit for a little bit, you know. And then the positive usually just goes quickly. Real quickly, my homeboy and really good friend and buddy, he taught me this super cool trick that I'm about to claim for myself and teach you. His name is CustomFPV, and this is the CustomFPV quick BT2 easy no solder free BT2 180 U plug modification. So all you need is a pair of side cutters and one of these U plugs. So there's just like this rubber cap on here, and it's super easy to just grab with your side cutters, just kind of pinch into it, and you can literally just boom and peel it off just like that. And then all you got to do here is I go and just clip off the side. Be really careful here. You really don't want to clip the wires. So we're gonna get like as close as we can and just clip off this excess plastic. I'm gonna go all the way around the BT2 plug, and then you can pull and twist these out of the way, and then I clip off all of this plastic and then clip off this little plug right here, and then just like that you have a pre-soldered, pre-flipped 90 or 180 or whatever you want to call it BT2 plug that's all ready to go. Okay, let's get this guy on here and finish this build. I'm just gonna hold it right there to line it up. Round is ground. Okay, so that's actually super nice. They put ground as the pad that's furthest in the back, and then that's kind of, so it's on like the more right hand side, and that's similar to how this is oriented. So we're just gonna solder it up nice and straight. And then like I said, sometimes the ground pads are frustrating and tricky. So don't be afraid to just kind of hold your soldering iron there a little bit. Let's check these solder joints out. They come out beautiful. All right, and last thing is, I believe the UFL plug is, oh, it's on top. Wow, that's super convenient. It's right over here. I'm gonna line it up and click it on. And then,
I'm gonna get you some props.
Just like that, we're pretty much done. My good buddy and friend CustomFPV is grabbing me some props. These are HQ props. These are the ultralight props. These are my favorites. They did come out with a newer lower pitch KV or lower pitch prop for higher KV motors, but because I still like running 26,000 kV motors, I found that the higher pitch props just have been a little bit more beneficial in my use case. So here we have the fully finished air brushless flight controller, the 5-in-1 build. Honestly, after completing this build, it was super easy to throw together. Being able to just solder motors on, solder a camera on, and then just throw it into a frame and you're done is like, it's not much. I don't know. Anyways, I really enjoyed how big the solder pads were on this board. The only problem that I had a little bit was with the ground on the camera, but grounds on every single board are usually all connected to each other. So when you solder onto the ground, you need to add a lot more heat because it's going to actually heat up a lot more of the board before you can actually get the solder to flow properly. But yeah, all in all, super clean, easy build on the brand new Air 5-in-1.